Hello and welcome to tonight's HBR, where we're doing a turnabout special commentary for the late UK race. I'm following James. I'm Ben Poynton from Australia. I raced this morning, and away we go. James is flying out of the gate. I'm joined by Craig and Becca. Craig, who are you following tonight?
So I'm following Grace from the Penguins. I'm hoping she's okay with this, and because we haven't actually had time to let her know this, but she's not actually in herd kit on my screen. But I'm hoping maybe she is on yours. She's still in her TTT kit. But yeah, the start doesn't look too bad at the moment. She's sitting in the group, so I guess we will see how they get on.
Yes, we shall. So this is a bit of a late decision, considering I've been drinking for the last few hours and discussing random shenanigans. So we'll see how this goes. Currently, they're heading up into the S's, and from there, they go down through the Italian village into the volcano and rinse, repeat for 3 laps. And this has been quite painful for the three of us. So now we get to enjoy watching somebody else suffer.
Yeah, it's far more enjoyable watching everyone else do this race than it is doing this race ourselves, having only done it like 2 hours ago and being slightly tempted to do it again. No, it's not worth it. It's a horrible race.
So
Uh,
in doing it again, I've seen that our Mark Shepherd, Lord Orange, is actually racing this race as well, having done the race 2 hours ago with you, Becca. How do you think that's going to go for him?
I know he was disappointed because he had a dropout or a technical issue just before the end, and so perhaps didn't end up in the position that he should have, seeing as how strong he was during the race. But honestly, I don't know. I don't. I feel like you don't do a better race 2 hours after doing a full out effort like that. It's going to be a tough one for him. But I don't know. The field is slightly less stacked than it was this morning, so maybe he'll be okay. Maybe he can just hang on and sit in there, save his energy, and then just go for the sprint at the end. Uh, Maybe he feels absolutely fantastic and he's going to animate the race. I don't know. I guess we will find out. Anyway, how is James getting on?
Well, on that, James is doing brilliantly. He's sitting right at the front of the front bunch in a fairly strong field. Like they're not coming down off four very much right on the front as they're going up to the last rise in the S's. And we're seeing the odd orange number as we go up over this. I don't predict that's going to happen very often before the last lap, but consistent fours and fives. And he's over that nicely. How's Grace doing?
Yeah, there's a slightly smaller group just hanging off the back of the front group, which has got quite a number of herd riders in it actually. Marioline's there, Simon S from the Hogs, and a couple of others. But yeah, so she's in the second group on the road. They're still putting out some fairly decent numbers. There's threes and fours being thrown out there. They're just going around the final quarter of the sprint. Can we hear Craig yet, or is he still silent?
Well, from previous efforts, I would assume Craig is silent, but Craig, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Here. Craig is here. So it looks like Thomas is just a couple seconds back of Grace's group. He's racing strong. He's in a group with Cy Seymour and a couple other herd riders and a few others. So he's doing pretty well after that first time through the S's, and we'll see how he gets on.
Okay. This is not fun.
And there's our man on the course, Mr. Bailey. Not
definitely
at all.
Definitely settled down. after the S's, but it's still holding about 4.0 before we get the little climb into the volcano. It's tough.
Make sure you're not hanging off the back when you get to that volcano thing, because people will start to sprint. You will see red numbers and you will hurt. Don't get dropped.
And there we have it. That's exactly how the volcano has to be treated. Don't get dropped. Whatever needs to be done is what needs to be done.
Yeah, as I found out earlier, much to my demise. Anyway, Grace is still in the group. They're just going down the dirt track. It's got a decent group, decent sized group, I would imagine. This will
It's an interesting thing, that dirt descent, because if you actually think about the CDA and the rolling resistance, it effectively works as a flat in Zwift, because it's not steep enough to really increase your speed, and the rolling resistance is going to slow you down. It's an interesting little place in the race, considering that not everyone thinks as nerdily about that as I do.
I appreciate your nerdy thoughts on it, to be fair. And you were very, very helpful for tactics earlier when we were doing ours. Can I just say that this group is way less chatty than ours was? No one is talking. No one is heckling. But where's the fun in this?
Well, there's heckling and there's heckling. So not everyone's able to ride at 4.5 watts a kilo and type. So
It's a talent. People should practice more.
So
I think most people are trying to get to the 4.5 watts per kilo first, and then they'll work on the typing. So
I was going to say that's kind of my thought. I got a couple messages in, but definitely some of the byplay lost me. So we're going through here, and it actually looks like Thomas is attempting to drop his group and bridge on his own. So he's opened up a couple meters and might be trying to attack on this ramp into the volcano, which hurt every single time when I raced earlier, thanks to Becca.
Can I just say it wasn't entirely me, because obviously I just didn't go by myself and I was following Tim. So I think if you want to apportion blame,
definitely Tim helped.
You have to, at least share it between us.
I will give Tim some credit.
I think you should.
Blame definitely needs to be apportioned there, but Mr. Bailey's group has suddenly strung out, and he's working very, very hard to try to keep touch on that. There's high fours, low fives being thrown out here. He's dangling off the back. He just needs to put in a massive dig to get back. Otherwise, he's now second group. So, how's the second and third formal groups going, guys?
So the second group have just gone up the climb. It did string out a lot, and Grace was hanging off the back somewhat, but she dug it down and she put out 5 watts a kilo, and she's got herself back into that. So it doesn't look like they've dropped anyone from their group. There is one person between them and the third group, but I don't know whether they got dropped or whether they're trying to bridge across. They're currently doing 4 watts a kilo, so I don't know whether they will. But yeah, second group is still all together.
So the third group, Thomas did not attempt to bridge, so that I think that person in the middle is somebody that was dropped, and so it looks like the third group is reforming as well, and will probably swallow up that person in front. Ben, how'd James make out on that getting back on?
He's done really well. So the whole group has come back together. So our front group is about 23, 24 riders strong, and they're ripping along. So they've hit the bridge back to the S's, and so Mr. Bailey's about to go through the suffering lap 2. So it's not going to be pleasant.
Lap 1 was suffering as well.
Unfortunately, the
lap 2's worse, James.
Lap on lap, so it's only about to increase, I'm afraid, James.
And having done it this morning, I'm quite enjoying watching you do it, mate. So,
Far more enjoyable watching everyone else suffer. Yeah,
it's always more enjoyable watching someone else suffer. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it definitely is.
It's also more enjoyable once you've already done it. Like, if you've still got it to come, it's way worse. Because you
That's
can
probably
see
the
all the suffering.
anticipation.
Yeah. Anyway, Grace's group, she's currently 37th. She's doing some good bowsering, actually. Actually, a lot of the herd riders were doing some good bowsering there, sitting at the back of the group and not expending any energy. So, yeah, I think she's just going to hang in there for a bit. The rider off the back has definitely been dropped now, and will probably get picked up by group 3 shortly on the road. Although this actually might be group 3 now, because it looks like the front group is split. Do you know what's going on, Craig?
So I don't know exactly what's going on. So I don't think the front group is split yet. It may, or it might just be a couple solo riders. So Thomas's group in behind is strung out quite badly right now after the ramp up from the volcano tunnel. But I think this group looks like it's probably going to stay together through the Sestes. This definitely the dynamic of going through the S's right before the finishing sprint on the final lap is a hard one, and I know, Becca, you tried to go earlier and earlier, but it's tough.
Oh, it's terrible. Completely. Yeah, all I remember is
It does make an interesting tactic dynamic though. So it depends on what sort of rider you are and where your power requirements or power benefit is. So you very nearly made it, Becca. I must say that. You only just got caught right on the line.
For a brief few seconds, I thought I might actually do it, and then it was like I was stood still, and they both flew past me, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, of course that was going to happen. That was inevitable. But never mind. I did have a brief few seconds where I thought, oh, I might actually win this race for once. Flat sprinter's course, which clearly was stupid. At the moment, Grace seems to be having a little bit of a problem with her group. She's just fallen off the back, although she's putting in a good effort to get back on. These S's can be awfully difficult to hang on, especially the smaller the group gets. She's made it back on now, so hopefully she can save her legs for a little bit. But how are James and Thomas getting on?
So James is doing really well. He's still in the front bunch, holding 18th to 20th position. A number of riders have just dropped off. How's Thomas going, Craig?
So Thomas threw a feather down up that last the bigger hill coming out of the S's, and so he's still in his group, sitting 42nd, 43rd, and they're approaching the lap banner now. They're moving pretty good, and looks like they've got a bit of space behind their group, 7-8 seconds, and I think there's quite a big space in front of them, with maybe a couple riders in between their group and Grace's group. Okay, Ben, how's James getting on? He should be heading back towards the volcano now.
Yes, so James is just hit the land bridge, so he's come off the dirt and he's now cruising back to the volcano. He's doing a good job of bowsering and just sitting in his bunch. Concerningly for me, he's getting to the front a couple of times too many for someone that's a bit outgunned in the power stakes, but doing a really good job of actually trying to conserve his energy and stay in his group, because if he gets dropped from this, he's done.
Yeah, by the looks of it, it's a long way back from the front group. There's maybe 2 or 3 riders just in front of Grace's group that have been dropped off the front group, and well, the second group is catching them fairly fast. So I don't know whether they'll be able to hang on or not. But this is the thing that once you get dropped, the race gets a lot harder. So weirdly, it is easier to manage to struggle to hang on than it is to actually get dropped for the rest of your race.
Well, looking at the results from the earlier races, the groups were split by about 45 seconds to a minute, which almost worked out to being 45 seconds per lap. So dropping off is the devil in this race. And as we go up the volcano for the second time, this is where in the previous races, the front bunch has been shelled apart. So let's see how James goes here. There's a couple of guys going off the front. The whole group has strung out into a nice long line. And Mr. Bailey is last rider in the bunch, which is not where you want to be at this point in time. Has Grace's group hit the volcano rise yet?
No, they're just coming up to it now. I think she's been saving her energy quite well, but I don't know. Well, they've picked up a few riders in front now, so their group is bigger. So it does make it easier for it to sort of come back together. But then also, if you're last rider, it does make it easier for you to get shelled off. Yeah, they're just going up 3% now at the moment. A lot of feathers have been dropped, and Grace is just unfortunately hanging off the back doing 5.4. So, there we go. She's putting a little bit of a sprint to get back on. And it looks like this time round she'll stay in the group. Has James's group come back together, or are they now split up?
No, James's group has come back together. So as much as I was thinking it was going to split apart, it has not at all. No one has been dropped from the group, which is a bit of a difference from the previous races. So we'll see how this goes from here. But next up, the bridge and the S's. How's Thomas going?
So Thomas's group is on the ramp into the volcano right now. Lots of feathers thrown, and he's doing a pretty good job towards the front of that group. But it is, as it always is, it's stringing out a bit, and he's kind of filtering back through that pack. So hopefully he's going to be able to hang on here. Really, when I got dropped at this point earlier, the race got harder after that point, as we had our little group of 2 and 3 trying to stay away from the group behind us, and it was really disappointing to watch the pack move just meter by meter further away.
That's the thing. The front group often settles down somewhat after these punch points, and so you get a bit of a rest. Whereas if you're in the chasing group and there's only 2 or 3 of you, you don't get that rest, and your race becomes a lot more painful. So
no, you really don't, do you? And if you're in that front bunch, or the further forward bunch, you get the benefit of the pack speed, which is going just 1 or 2 kilometers an hour faster, which makes all the difference in a race.
Grace's group appear to have shelled a couple of people off the back. There's 2 people now off the back who are doing, again, more watts per kilo than the people who managed to stay in the pack, but they won't get back on. They've got 4 seconds now. So Grace has done very well to hang in there. There are a few tough spots where she could have, she was hanging off the back slightly, but no, she's done absolutely fantastically to make the effort to stay back in, and now she's confidently bowsering and hopefully saving herself for the next of the S's. How's the front group getting on?
Yeah, very well. So we've got quite a good smattering of herd jerseys. I can see a couple of WKG, a vegan, as much as my personal opinion there is irrelevant, and 3R. So we've got a good grouping in here, and they're just ripping through and lapping a number of the B riders right at the back of the race, which is always discouraging when I was back there. How's Thomas going?
So Thomas's group is leaving the volcano through the glass tunnel and coming back towards the S's. Thomas is doing a great job. He's staying in the draft and off the front most of the time, but he's being pretty careful where we're approaching just that little ramp. I say that he moves right up to the front, but just in positioning so that he doesn't get launched off the back on those key little climbs. So he's doing a good job, and I think he's looking to stay with this group until the finishing sprint. Becca, how's Grace getting on?
Yeah, they're just going over the S's at the moment. She's sitting on the front for a lot of it. She looks strong. There's a lot of 5 and 6 watts a kilo sort of numbers being shown around, which means it's probably hurting them all somewhat. But yeah, I mean, Marioline's still in that group, and there's a couple of other herd jerseys. Hugh Shepherd is there too, and other people whose names are too long, so they're not on the screen. So that's irritating. But yeah, she'll probably stick with this group until the end now, I would imagine. It's big enough, and I think she's strong enough that she'll be able to hang on for the last volcano climb. So yeah.
No, fantastic. I'd just like to point out that watching this front group, a number of them managed to get that sneaky super tuck in right at the bottom of the descent before the sprint. If you can pull that one off, there's a great little opportunity for a second or two of rest before you actually hit the sprint.
Yeah, Jan did it in our race earlier today, and I did not even realize you could super tuck down there until he did it, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is how he saves so much energy.
No, I'll admit that I was actually caught out by that. I didn't realize you'd actually be able to get fast enough and get the sprint there, and I'm a little bit embarrassed by that with my opinion of being fairly well rounded on all my course knowledge. So, learning something like that, watching Oyan, one of those things.
Craig, how is your group getting on?
So they are still moving together. Not really much change. They don't really seem to be attacking each other much, other than on the volcano. So it looks pretty tame at the moment, and the group seems they picked up a few riders, and I'm actually not entirely sure. They picked up a couple of riders that were dropped, but I think there was a group that caught up to the back as well. I didn't actually see that happen, but I don't think they've caught enough riders for all of the group now. So they're going through and heading through the sprint point right now to start the final lap.
There seem to be a lot of individual riders sort of now on the course between the front group and Grace's group, which I think is the second. I don't know whether they are, unfortunately, riders that are about to be lapped, or whether they are people who have fallen off the front group. So that is a bit of a problem with this course, is that the laps are so short that if you are perhaps a D or a low C rider, that the front couple groups are going to slightly demoralizingly ride past you at a speed that you can only dream of. But yeah, Grace's group are still all together. I don't think they've dropped any more of them. A few of them went for a little bit of an attack at the sprint point, but nothing seems to have come of it, and they all seem to have come back together. So they've just gone down the dirt track, and they're now heading towards the volcano. How is James getting on?
James is doing brilliantly. He's still firmly in the front bunch, and further to your comment, I think there's a combination of both riders who are unfortunately being lapped and riders who can't quite hold the pace. But as to James, he's doing a great job holding his group through the volcano. They've just gone up the first rise. They're about to hit the second up before the banner, and hopefully the Zwift gods smile on him and give him a nice arrow or feather to actually finish the race off. On that, power-ups. Becca, Craig, which one would you prefer to finish this race off?
I tried it with the feather earlier, and I think for me that was probably the best one I could have hoped for, because I was never going to win a sprint even with an aero, so attacking on the hill with the feather beforehand was the best chance I had. And I mean, it didn't work out for me, but you know, I gave it all I could. So yeah, feather for me. But if you've got a sprint, you want the aero.
So you want the arrow on this one with the downhill right before the sprint. I think the truck is actually a sneaky good option, because you can hit it right at the top of that hill, and
you used that to great effect earlier, didn't you?
It worked pretty well. But it was, you gain speed all the way without as much work all the way down, and then really launch as soon as you hit the bottom of the hill. So I think the truck is sneaky good here, and I think there's a finishing strategy for all three power-ups on this, and I think it's a really good course because of that.
To be honest, as long as you get a power up, it's slightly better. After doing yesterday, where I basically ended up with nothing the entire race, and everyone else was dropping all of their power ups in the final 30 seconds. You know, any power up is preferable to that. Grace's group have just gone up the short, sharp volcano climb. They are all still together. Grace still seems happily in the pack. So yeah, I would imagine they will now stay together until the final sprint point. How is everyone else getting on?
So James is currently happily sitting about 10th in his group of 17-ish riders, and they're just about to enter the S's for the last time to head towards the finish. So how's Thomas doing?
So it looks like two or three riders have launched an attack and gone off the front of Thomas's group on the last lap ramp into the volcano. It's a long way to try to attack from. Maybe they're hoping a couple people bridge and just to reduce the group, but it looks pretty interesting right now, and things are really ramped up. Where I think everybody looks like the whole group up at 3.5 to 4.5, pretty much the whole way through the volcano. It looks like it's mostly come back together now, but I think there's still one rider off the front.
Yeah, there's definitely individual riders now in between that group and the one that Grace is in. Two people sort of fell off the back of Grace's group by the looks of it, actually going up the volcano, which I didn't notice, but the time gaps would suggest that happened. And then there's a few more which look like they've come off the front of the third group. So this group is slightly smaller, but there's still a lot of hard jerseys going on. Marioline's still there, Hugh Shepherd's still there, and yeah, Grace is still comfortably sitting in the back. She hasn't been sitting on the front too much, so that's sensible, saving energy. And yeah, off they go towards the S's, and hopefully they're all looking forward to it being over, which I definitely was at this point. How is the front group getting on? They must be quite close to the finish now.
The front group is very close, so they're just going up over the final rise. James is unfortunately losing just a little bit of ground to the front bunch. There was an acceleration through some of the last rollers. It looks like he's probably going to end up 19th, as the front just is accelerating away from him. But we'll just stick with it until the end here. He's coming down round the corner into the sprint point, and then in 12 seconds or less, he'll be done. Aero power up dropped, giving it everything he's got left, and firmly going to be 19th. 7.5 watts a kilo, and he's finished 29 minutes and 9 seconds later. Well done, James. Next.
So So next would be Grace's group. There's some individual riders just in front of her who have sort of been discussing how they can stay away from Grace's group, but I'm not sure they're actually going to manage to, because Grace's group is quite big and seems to be soaking people up as they go through. They're just going over the S's now. A few people making a few little punchy attacks. Grace going up to 7.5 watts a kilo just to sit on the front there with Maryline and a couple of riders from Dirt. So yeah, they've got maybe 1.5 kilometers left to go, and people dropping their power ups too early. I'm not sure why they're doing that. Why you would drop your aero helmet at this stage unless you really are suffering so much that you don't think you can get to the end. I don't know. Seems a bit of an odd choice. So yeah, they've just gone over the another one of the S's, and I think they're going to come around the corner for the yeah, they're just going to hit the final climb before you take the downhill and then onto the sprint. So Grace is still in the pack. It will be interesting to see what she's got left and whether she's managed to get a power up on the last banner or whether she's got to go it alone. So a few of the riders are putting a little bit of a dig. Maryline there with 7 watts a kilo. She's definitely looking at having a go up this hill. And they're all stringing out, and they've caught a pack which they're going to lap. So now there's just people everywhere. And so you've got to try and keep an eye on who you're actually racing and who isn't really in your team. But yeah, Grace is still hanging on to that group. They've shelled a few people off the back already, and she's just about to go take the left-hand corner into the final straight. No power-up dropped yet, so I don't know whether she doesn't have one or whether she's saving it or whether she's forgotten. It doesn't look like she's got one, so that's a bit of a shame. She's started her sprint now. A few people coming past with arrows, 8 watts a kilo being dropped. I think she's going to come across in 33rd or 34th, depending on, 34th place. So how's Thomas getting on, Craig?
So Thomas is doing very well. So he's dropped some of that group. He's kind of at the front of his group, coming down the hill towards the turn. No power up yet, and so we'll just see how he does here up the street. Start to sprint. He's got the aero helmet. Big dig. 8 watts a kilo. Little bit of orange numbers, and what a big pack sprint. Looks like a 40th, maybe. Hard to tell. So many riders so close. That's a great race and a great sprint by the whole group there.
No, fantastic. Sounds like everyone that we've followed has actually done really well. So I have actually clicked onto group favourite Shifty to watch his finish, and he's just dropped a feather to get over the last rise. He's trying to sprint away from the group he was in. He's holding well. He's just going to get over the line. One rider is catching hard, and he's done it. He's managed to stay away. Anyway, thank you very much. That's been our herd beginner race for the night. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Just to jump in for a second, from my perspective, that race, the S's weren't too bad apart from the last set where they just ramped up the pace a little bit earlier than I was expecting. But the hardest part for me was that ramp into the volcano, because it was splitting every single lap. It's horrible to get back on, but really pleased with the race.
And well done to you, James. You did a great job.
Well done, James.
Thanks, everyone.
And on that note, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Ta.